Thanks everyone for tuning in to check out our podcast today, Maker Connect. My name is Matt Despins, and I'll be your host for the show. With me today, we have Devin Noonan. Devin is currently Chief Revenue Officer at Bedrock, and no doubt has some interesting thoughts and perspectives to share. Devin, if you're okay with it, let's start by hearing an overview about your career and your current projects so listeners can get just a sense of your negotiations experience, and also maybe a little bit about when you kind of discovered the importance of negotiation. So I will turn it over to you, sir.
Thanks, Matt. Excited to be here. And
Yeah.
happy to provide a bit of context as to my career and how I got to where I am today. But in a nutshell, I've been in sales for upwards of a decade now in a variety of different manners. Started off my first job out of college selling autographed memorabilia on consignment to
Nice.
nonprofits. Shifted into HR tech for a period of time. Led one of the top global sales teams in the world at Gartner, selling access to analyst research and insights to tech CEOs. And then pivoted over here to Bedrock about a year and a half ago now as the Chief Revenue Officer, where I really lead all things brand, sales, marketing, partnerships, you name it. As I like to say, I lead all the fun stuff here and leave the rest to my business partner.
Well, at least you call it out. You know what I mean? There's no shy stuff. I get the fun stuff. Everybody else does the other stuff. I got you. I'm totally with you.
Precisely. And,
Yeah.
when we think of the lens of negotiation specifically, I mean, certainly I was a dual major, and one of those was psych as an undergrad. So I always loved, understanding how the human brain worked and how people operate, which pretty, organically fed into my sales career. And then I did a master's at University of Maryland in tech entrepreneurship, followed up by the executive MBA program at Kellogg, which I just completed last year, and actually met Osama, who's my business partner here at Bedrock, through the program. Okay. So, I've seen it all through that, institutional lens, I think is where I'm going with that. But I think what I've really learned the most, about negotiation has come through my interactions throughout my professional career, day in and day out. And if I'd be lying if I didn't say I'm learning something new every day still.
Aren't we all? I mean, I've had this podcast now for about 3 months, and I'm just amazed every time I have a guest. It's like I realize how much I don't know. I mean, there's just so much to learn out there about business, new terminology, new concepts, new strategies. So I appreciate that humility, because I think that's true for all of us, right?
Absolutely. If you're not trying to get better, then what are you doing?
What are you doing? So the I want to call out first something interesting. Right off the bat, something I heard was two pretty big discrepancies in size and scope of organization. So, you talked about one of your first roles, selling the autographed memorabilia to, was it nonprofits, correct?
It was indeed.
Yeah. So versus a small little company called Gartner. I mean, it's a small.
Yeah.
So let's talk now. Obviously, there's a million different directions we can go with this, but your general, if I ask you, what are a couple of the biggest business/negotiation differences you experienced in your roles in the smaller space versus a behemoth like Gartner, who's also so well respected? What comes to mind first from that negotiation business thought process?
Oh man, there's a variety of different things there, but I think when we focus on some of the smaller, right, sales and, even in the nonprofit industry, when I was working with them, a lot of the stuff we were providing was actually on consignment. So it was a very interesting value prop, right, and pitch, where you're trying to get over that too good to be true dynamic. And I think I still see that today, honestly, in some of the things that we offer here at Bedrock, because we do no risk, no upfront cost recovery, and we offer some, free trials to experience how we can do a master data cleanse. But when you're navigating that too good to be true dynamic, it's truly making sure that you're aligned to the value. And I think that is a constant across anything that you're negotiating. If you haven't aligned to some type of value that you're going to drive when you're on the sales side of the picture there, you're fighting a losing battle from day one. So overcoming that and handling those objections surrounding, in that instance, the too good to be true piece is one thing. But then when we think of the size of an overall organization, and I can actually give you kind of two lenses here too from the Gartner perspective. So
Love it.
Gartner takes a position on both the buy side of technology and the sell side of technology. So essentially, most of the major corporations in the world that are tech vendors are working with Gartner, and we do currently here at Bedrock, right, to plug in and better understand market dynamics. What are the latest cutting edge things that we should be thinking about including into our product and positioning ultimately to prospective buyers. In the same token, if you're a massive enterprise out there and you're looking to buy technology, odds are you're picking up the phone and talking to Gartner before you make that purchasing decision. So there's two dynamics. And I was leading a sales team that was really focused on selling into the tech vendors. So when I think of that smaller lens, we're talking about oftentimes organizations, some of which are maybe pre-revenue and are strictly navigating, funding that they got from some investors.
Yep.
Some of which are, maybe in that, 1 to 5 million ARR range. And oftentimes, if I'm asking for, I don't know, we'll give you a ballpark, anywhere from 50,000 to 100,000 a year from a contract commitment, we could be talking, a sizable chunk of money that you have coming in.
Yep.
So when you're working through that type of negotiation, it circles back to that first point. One, you need to ensure that you've done your job as far as articulating value, first and foremost. But two, I think you need to really partner with these companies and make sure that you're trying your best to create that kind of win-win scenario. So I always think of that zone of possible agreement, ZOPA, as you may hear it, phrased. And obviously, when you're on the sales side, you want to extract as much value as you can. On the buy side, you want to pay as little as you can. Right. But when you're working with these organizations, I found that being just honest and upfront from that first dialogue was what really drove the most success for my team and I. And it really came down to, hey, we're going to be asking you for a financial commitment in this range at the end of this sales cycle, right? Assuming that we do our job and demonstrate the value. Is that even within the realm of possibility? And I am a big proponent of the qualify in and qualify out and do it as fast as humanly possible. Because every moment that I'm spending talking to someone that can't afford my solutions is a moment I'm not spending talking to someone who can. And a need to have versus a nice to have is another thing that I think you need to identify there. Can their business live without you, or or what are their alternatives, right? What's that best alternative to a negotiated agreement here? And if it's the status quo and they're okay with that, we probably didn't hook into a challenge that was deep enough, and we're fighting a losing battle once again. So, long-winded way of saying, I think you got to hone into the value, be very forthright from the first conversation, and level set expectations from day one. You need to be on that level playing field if you're ever going to strike a deal. And the sooner you can do that, the better.
I loved how you talked about value there, not only delivering value and driving it, but when you look at different size negotiations, the call out of the 1 to 5 million ARR was perfect, because if you talk about a 100,000, if we think about it from the lens of negotiations, if we talk about $100,000 to a company with 1 million ARR versus a company that's 200 million, they value $100,000 very differently, don't they?
Oh, absolutely.
And so when we look at trying to do an analysis of what the other side might value, in this scenario, we know that one's going to have a much greater value of $100,000 versus the other. What are some of your strategies or thoughts, is a better word? What are some of your thoughts that you might have going into a negotiation on how you might be able to learn a bit more about how the other side might value something that you have? Like what kind of things do you think about of how can I find out how much they value my stuff?
Well, I think the first, and I mean, I would say easiest thing, but I think it often goes overlooked in sales specifically, is asking the right questions,
Yeah.
and just being genuinely curious. So from the onset, I'm encouraging any of my sales reps to essentially ask the right questions. Don't get overexcited. Listen, at the end of the day, right? In most instances, you're bringing some type of tool to somebody that is going to drive some type of value, in its simplest form. The how they allocate the value of that value, we'll circle back to in a second. But I think you need to ensure, though, that you understand what's keeping them up at night, right? I love that, kind of lens of, this is what is the most challenging thing that I'm doing in my job. This is, where you can plug in and resist the urge to just, word vomit your solutions out to these individuals that you're speaking with. So I think the sooner you're able to pick apart, right, what really are the pain points in their day to day and how you can overcome that, the sooner you're able to then articulate that value. And I think anytime you're able to quantify that value, it's great. But I think of like Gartner's research and advisory, it's tough to, I mean, on the buy side, you can be like, yeah, we can, review some contracts and tell you if you're getting a good deal or not. When you're selling to the tech vendors, it almost is that pie in the sky kind of dream that you're selling, because you're really honing in on, hey, we're going to help your business with all things go to market and strategy and all of this. And, I've had many a CEO turn back to me and say, well, how much money am I going to make if I give you X amount of dollars? I'm like, I can't bridge that direct, quantifiable, hard dollar analysis, but you need to, believe that if you are doing all of the right things, if you're aligning to those buyers, right? What's your average deal size then, right? I can start to pick apart some of those things and try to map it back, but it's not like a, cookie cutter exact science, unfortunately. So it takes you on an interesting journey when you're trying to sell. But the more, I guess, thoughtful you are in your line of questioning, and make sure you're asking the right questions that are going to align to your solutions, the better chance you're going to have as you get further along in the sale and the negotiation path.
Yeah, and it's amazing how you really get to accomplish two things at once, right? Like it's when you're actually showing a genuine interest in somebody and what keeps them up at night and their pain points. Not only are you establishing that rapport and that relationship, but also you're gaining the information that you need, right? I mean, you have to. In my former life, I was in law enforcement and I was a police officer, and so I'm going to give two very different responses if I ask a question aggressively versus like friendly, right? If we need information out of a situation, to your point, I love that call out, Devin. If we need information, we really want to be able to establish that relationship to get that information. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and something I think about too, just looking at what we do here at Bedrock now is, we are primarily working with billion-dollar plus in revenue organizations. So going from my time at Gartner leading that sales team, where we really focused on the CEO is more or less the end-all be-all, and you're working directly with him to get sign-off at the end of the day, to, we're talking about, I don't know, upwards of a dozen sometimes different players that are involved in the sales cycle across different business units that all have unique different needs and wants, either out of your tool or out of even the evaluation process. When we think of IT coming into the ropes and they're like, oh, I maybe just don't want to implement another thing because I just finished a 2-year project that was hell. So you're navigating all of these different personalities, and I think being thoughtful in the larger enterprise with mapping out the key players, right? I think of like the Miller Hyman, strategy here, where you need to know who's who. You need to know who has the final decision, at the end of the day. You need to know who can potentially veto. You need to know who's an influencer. Yep. You need to know all of those inner workings and win enough favor to ultimately get the deal over the hump. So you're almost approaching it with a few different negotiation paths and sales strategies depending on the individual that you're on the phone with. So navigating those, right, it's a whole different ball game versus your one-to-one, pure play negotiation. I can either help you and find that, Zopa that's going to work for us both here, or we're going to go our separate ways. So it's a crazy different dynamic, but I think the fundamental principles are still fairly similar at the end of the day.
Do you find one of the best ways to overcome these multi-dimensional negotiations where there is multiple people involved who, to your point, Devin, might have competing desires and interests and motivations? Do you find that the most effective strategy to kind of get past that or to minimize the confusion is to do just a lot of research beforehand to really make sure you know what those guardrails are?
Yeah, so I think research is great, and I'm probably going to throw a curveball at you here to say I used to be the guy that over-researched every single sales call that I ever had.
You worked for Gartner.
Yeah.
If you didn't do research, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can ask anyone I've worked with. I was always the last one in the office, just researching for the next day. I can say I honestly do exponentially less research nowadays when I get on the phone. I want to know, who your company is and kind of what industry you're in and all of that. But at the end of the day, I think coming in almost blind to an extent and then asking the thoughtful questions I need to ask that I know are proven is what gets me to move these deals further and further along and to ultimately see more success. I think later in the sales cycle and when you're in those deeper negotiation opportunities, research is important, and I would say maybe a better word to use would be preparation is more important. Like I want to go in and I want to hypothesize as to where do I think I'm going to see pushback from any given individual here. What are my levers? And when I think of my levers, I want to know which ones do I want to pull on first and foremost. So if you think of just a traditional SaaS deal, right? We're talking term length, we're talking billing terms, we're talking price, we're talking the variety of services if you have a bunch of different options, number of licenses, all these different things are all levers I can potentially pull on. Now I got to think about, okay, what is the most beneficial outcome to my organization? And if I'm going to start working my way back to that, ZOPA, that zone of possible agreement, I need to know which levers I want to start pulling on if I'm going to offer things up. And I'm a big proponent of the give and a get here as well, Matt. So I want you to ensure that I'm not just handing you things that you're not asking for. And that comes down to doing good objection handling at the end of the day, right? If you say, it's a pretty steep, price, and price might be a problem here. I understand price might be a problem. What about the price concerns you, right? Asking a question like that and putting it back on them, because I've seen time and time again a sales rep that goes, well, price, I can lower the price, and they instantly jump in and and as we like to call it, they drop your pants and that's it.
Yep.
But what if it's actually just, hey, I need net 45 payment terms instead of net 30, and now you're shaving, 10, 20, 30K off a contract over 3 years when all they wanted was net 45 or net 60 or monthly billing, right? So you got to unpack those things thoughtfully and hold your cards close until you need to show them.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, it's sometimes not even about the price. The words that come out are related to price, but when you ask, okay, what about that price concerns you? You might end up finding out that this is really just about they want to win. I mean, they just need something to show their boss that they did X, Y, and Z, or there's some emotional need there, right, to get there. So I love that you called that out, like diving in further. I also agree with you. I know when I get on, when I'm on a call and somebody is trying to sell me something and they get on and they say, oh yeah, Matt, I can see X, Y, and Z about you and your company and stuff. I'm like, cool. You can read LinkedIn and a website, like good, right? Like good for you. I say it with all kindness, but I appreciate the effort of it. But to your point, Devin, it does come across as not completely authentic. It's almost more authentic to get in and a little bit like you said, but ask questions.
Yeah.
You ask questions. What are some of your broad topic for all of us in sales, but what are some of your favorite types of discovery questions? And do you have a tone and a posture? Like if you and I were on a discovery call right now, is this typically how you communicate? Is this your vibe?
Yeah, I
Yep.
I think I'm very much my authentic self
Yep.
at all times, and
Yep.
I'll even let people I work with, hey, if you hear the occasional F-bomb, I promise I'm not
Yep.
going to cursing at you. It's just the way I interact, and if it makes you uncomfortable, I'll make sure I reel it in. But
Sure.
at the end of the day, if I'm coming into a discovery call or even a demo or anything that I'm doing, I'm very just upfront and direct from the lens of, hey, my goal on this discussion is to understand some of the challenges that you're currently faced with and see if our solutions map to it. And if there's some good synergy at the end of the call, great. We'll talk about next steps, demo, whatever you need to, make it a no-brainer to partner. And if it's not, I wish you all the best. And, I'll try and put some time back on your calendar and we'll figure that out sooner rather than later. Right. So
Yeah.
I'm very, relaxed and open in all of my discussions. And one of the first questions I love to ask, my favorite question, why did you take the call today? Right? I mean, there was some type of outreach or something that caught your eye, or maybe someone passed it along, right? Your boss passed it down and said, hey, you got to take this call with Devin, right? So, and it's just thrown on your plate. And then I asked, well, in a perfect world, when you think of your day to day, what could be better? And are you looking for certain solutions? Is there anything that you're currently really struggling with that you're looking for technology or a service to overcome? I mean, and you can package that up, right, however you want. But at the end of the day, asking those just high level basic questions to kick off the call generally tells me all that I need to know as far as where I want to guide the discussion. Because I'll hear at least one or two things there that are going to either, make my brain click and that light bulb go off and say, okay, this is the direction that's probably going to, drive the most value. And I give them the opportunity to just put in their own words exactly what their problem is.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the back end of the call, I can say, so you told me XYZ at the beginning of the call. If I can show you how Bedrock, right, can help you overcome XYZ, is that a reason enough to invest in our solutions? Yeah. The answer is always yes. And if it's a no, I'm like, well, then maybe I missed the mark here somewhere, and that really wasn't your biggest issue. So yeah, just high level questions to start, and then I think you can start tailoring things a bit more to whatever your offering is at the end of the day.
I love that you talked about authenticity. That's a big part of who I am. That's a big part of what our team does at the Maker Group. It's actually my tagline for my voice acting business. Is part of it is authenticity, right? But have you found? Let me rephrase that. I have found. Feel free to agree or disagree. I've found that in the last 10 years, especially in the last 4, there's really been this push in sales, push because it's what the prospect is expecting, of exactly what it sounds like you do, Devin, which is no more BS, right? I mean, we're going to show value. We're not, as you called it, and I agree, we're not going to word vomit all over about everything we do in the world. Like, and all, we make this about you. And like, we want to be able to help you because I want to help you and I want to make money. But I'm not going to try to twist this and manipulate it and do all these things, right? Like, do you feel that it's, do you say, hey, man, I think it's always been that way? Or do you also feel in the last 3 to 5 years that pressure to be authentic has increased?
I think you're right. I think it's, the societal changes, right, that are all around us. And I think you're starting to see these deals in a very fluid business environment now, right? Where I think it used to be very transactional, a lot of in-office, face-to-face meetings, and now you've got kids running around in the background and dogs barking on Zooms and all of that. And I can't tell you how many times I see all the chaos going on behind the scenes and people apologize. I'm like, no, like that's the new normal. Like the world has shifted in such a way where it's okay to just be yourself, come as you are. And I think I look at every relationship, and I focus on this. This isn't a transaction for me. It's a relationship that I'm building, because we went through a comprehensive rebrand last year, for example, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we changed the company name, ripped it out, we put a new website up, the whole 9 yards. And if I was looking at sales and negotiation through the lens of just transactional business, that doesn't help me build a brand, right? It doesn't help me expand and put our best foot forward, both in those singular dealings or in the long-term kind of growth strategies. So I think of it as I need to always prioritize each relationship in that moment. I need to be present, and I need to do my best potential job of coming over the fence and being empathetic and understanding who I'm working with, and being very honest as to whether or not I can help them with their challenges. Because at the end of the day, they're going to leave this call with one of two things. One, I understand what Bedrock does and they can't really help me for what I need. Or two, I understand what they do and they can help me for what I need. And that's, it's in its simplest form. But I want them to at least walk away having a pleasant experience, because in today's day and age, to kind of go full circle, right? One bad interaction can be very, very bad for a brand or a personal image or any of that. So the more authentic I can be, the more empathetic I can be, and just very, transparent and open, the better I think our brand is going to do, and the better, reception our brand is going to receive when it comes to every interaction that we have, whether that is one-to-one, one-to-many, or just seeing the logo out there. Oh, I remember those Bedrock guys. They were good people. Wasn't good for us, but for some.
but they were still good people. Yeah. And you kind of summarize that beautifully, which is, there has been some shift in the human condition over the last 3 to 5 years, where it's like the mask drops a little bit, right? Like a lot of the formalities are gone, dogs running around, people showing vulnerability more in social media, male people who don't even wear a uniform anymore. They're just dressed like whatever. All of that awkwardness, I think, is gone. We're dropping the mask a bit and we're just being ourselves. And in the world of negotiation and sales, when my experience and the guests that we have, the most success is coming from the folks who are treating these like very human experiences, right? If we're in a negotiation, I have some things that I value that I need. You have some things that you value and you need. Let's not be adversarial about this. Let's try to collaborate, build some trust, and see if we can help each other get what we need. Does that sound right?
Absolutely. And you just sparked something in my brain, just thinking back to a negotiation class at Kellogg, which was in a real incredible, like, win-win, partnership. I've seen some scenarios where people reserve the right to actually renegotiate an agreed upon deal post, that initial like signature, where you build such trust throughout that engagement that you can actually sit down after the fact and say, hey, I know we both had some level of posturing, regardless of how authentic, we wanted to be and trustworthy we were trying to come off as. In a perfect world, where were you netting out here? And are there, right, some other things we could potentially bring to the table for one another here, that are still within our ZOPA, but actually give us both bigger wins to walk away with? And that comes back to your point. It comes down to truly having an authentic relationship, and this just unthought of level of trust when you think of the old business dealings of sitting across table, stare downs in a boardroom. And if you're able to get to that point, I think that is what a true, right, collaborative partnership means at the end of the day. And that's the ideal state, right? So, and that's all, I think, something that really wasn't possible, 50 years ago in those tense, head-to-head negotiations. But I think it's more possible now than ever before.
As I said, that's why I'm so lucky to be a host on a podcast every time with people who are smarter than me. I always say I'm the smartest guy in the room I run. And luckily that hasn't happened on one podcast yet. So here's another example. But like, you just brought up something I had not ever heard of or thought of, but it's such a reflection of trust, which is like two people who have gained so much trust and respect for each other. They're basically saying, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but they're basically saying, look, we have a lot of trust, but we're going into a negotiation. We realize we're probably only at best going to hit the mark 75% of where we want to be. So let's build in a phase 2 of this, right? Like we'll negotiate phase 1 and we'll agree, almost like parties going into a contract agreeing on arbitration, right? Like we like each other enough that we agree, not that arbitration always says that, but we like each other enough that we agree we want to give this every possible chance to succeed. So let's build in a round 2 of this where we've let our guard down even further. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, and let me give you an example, right? So
Yeah.
let's think of, you're sitting down, you've come to terms, and then you say, hey, if we're reflecting back on this deal, what would have made it a better win for you? And you'd be like, honestly, I would have traded off $5,000 a month on the contract to get you from net 60 to net 30 because cash flow is more important to us. And they look at us and say, well, I'd love to save $5,000 a month and I have no problem paying net 30. Done. Right. So,
Right.
but those are things where the nature of a negotiation is, not showing your cards as, as best you can. And when you're able to say, hey, we're on the same side of the fence now, we're already agreed, we're doing business, right? Let's show what all those cards are and see if there are areas of opportunity to just make a improved deal. And it's something special when you're able to do that. And it's not something that will always happen. And it depends on the dynamic of the negotiation. But I think it's some more complex situations where you may have months and months of negotiation, even like mergers, acquisitions, things of that nature. If you can leave some room for that, and oftentimes you may have brokers that are helping to navigate that, that helps coming back to the table, with some intermediaries to make it a significantly smoother path to work in some additional wins for both parties at the end of the deal.
Yeah, I mean, I'd never heard of that, but it's so logical. Like, really, as I'm processing it, what you're talking, I mean, it's so logical because even the people who have established the maximum amount of trust and respect and open communication, you're never giving 100% in the negotiation, call it round 1. It's not happening. But to have that built in of like, okay, we were at 85%, but like, let's get the other, we're not going to get 15, no one gets 100, but let's get the other 12%, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's a really good idea. I'm going to incorporate this into my future podcast if I have your permission here. But
absolutely, that's why I'm here, Matt.
I've not heard that concept before. I can tell, Devin, in talking to you, that you have a very, just as a person too, and your business, you have a very analytical side, but you also have a really, like you said, you study human psychology. You have a very psychologically motivated thought process with sales and whatnot. If we think about negotiations as kind of both an art and a science, 50-50 is not allowed in this answer. Do you think, which one do you lean a little bit more heavily towards, a little bit more of an art or a little bit more of an analytical science?
I'm definitely leaning the art route, which may come as a surprise, with the psychology background, where I do think, having your frameworks and your strategy and your different tactics all broken out and buttoned up is very important for negotiation. But at the end of the day, it's a human interaction. You need to be feeling out that person on the other side of the table, or people on the other side of the table. And you need to really have this high level of emotional intelligence. I think that's what really makes the most successful negotiators or salesmen or salespeople. It's really understanding what's going on, reading the room, feeling out, those things that aren't being said, whether it's in mannerisms or in the tone of voice. And that's all art to me at the end of the day, right? It's piecing all of those, dynamic parts of the puzzle together to help guide your next move and strategy. And I think the big thing for me too, which you can't really prepare a lot for, is active listening. And I told my sales reps, ad nauseum, like, when you deliver your pricing or your proposal, I want you to get it out and shut up. Like, just mute yourself. I mean, that's the one beauty about the virtual world today. I'm like, the second you spit it out, mute yourself.
Yep.
And get their thoughts and feedback, because I see too many people that will jump the gun and dive in and say, well, that's the price, but I can, I'm like, no buts. No, this is what it is. If you've done your job to this point, like, you should be in good shape. Now let's see what they say. But implementing active listening and understanding what they're really asking for, asking those clarifying questions, all of that, that's all part of the artistry as far as I'm concerned. So I'm a big proponent of the art. I think you need to be prepared. I don't want to underestimate the importance of preparation here, but I do think the art it's a beautiful thing, and it comes with time. And something I know you and I talked a little bit before the show today, Matt, about getting comfortable being uncomfortable.
There it is.
And it's just something that is massive. I've been told no more times than I've been told yes. Like Michael Jordan,
of course.
Right? He's missed how many more shots than he's made. And I think getting comfortable being rejected and shot down and just having someone rip into you when you've been nice and you're just trying to sell something, and I really didn't deserve this, but maybe that guy's just having a bad day,
having a day,
taking it and being respectful, all of that, right? I think prepares you more and more for that unknown that's going to come in a negotiation.
Yeah, because it does take a ton of different directions and all kinds of different ways that we didn't anticipate. That's a great call out. Before we dive into and wrap up, and I want to hear a lot, not a little, I want to hear a lot about what's going on at Bedrock. I do want to hear your thoughts on ego in negotiations, because you strike me, as we're talking here and before the show, as a really, like we talked about, humble, kind of authentic person. And when you have seen ego either in yourself, which it's happened to all of us at times, or on the other side of a business deal or negotiation, what have you seen that do to the negotiation? What effects have you seen?
It's negative, I think, in just about every experience. I'm trying to think if there's like a positive way to spin ego, and maybe on holding the line to an extent. In some scenarios it can be very, very moderately beneficial, but I think at the end of the day, so I just graduated from Kellogg, and our motto is high impact, low ego, right? So and I think the first thing they say when you walk into day one of class is check your ego at the door. You're coming from all different walks of life. Understand you deserve to be here. And I like to take that approach to my sales and my negotiation. I don't care how big the company is that I'm working with. I think everyone deserves to be in the same room right now. We're all coming in looking for different things. Let's see if there's some, good synergy amongst the things that we're looking for, and see if we can find a path forward that's going to, benefit everyone involved in some way, shape, or form. This is significantly deconstructing sales and negotiation. But at the end of the day, if you're coming in with an ego and ulterior motives, and you're just too set in your ways, you're not going to be able to implement the active listening I talked about. You're not ever going to truly be able to be empathetic and understand what your counterparty is, bringing to the table, and really what they need to pull out of this for it to be a win for them. Honestly, your desired outcomes can end up being a bit malicious to an extent of it's my way or the highway. And anytime you're coming in with that mindset, I don't think anyone ever really feels good walking away from that table, deal or no deal, So it's something that I am very against. Like I said, I've seen some instances, and I think like a car salesman can sometimes be an example of, here it is, this is best price, this is all I can do. And it's like, well, I need a car, and I'm going to move forward in some instances, and that's that. But you don't, feel great after some of those dialogues. I think checking your ego at the door is big, and, being humble enough to go in understanding, hey, I'm going to have some needs and wants. They're going to have some needs and wants. Let's see what we can align here and see if we can make something happen, but also be comfortable enough in that same token of saying, if we both walk away, it's okay. There's going to be
It's
more at
okay.
bats. There's going to be the next one. And, it's okay to wish someone the best in their endeavors and not partner with them,
Not partner, and then maybe I catch you on the next one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I catch you on the next one, and that's a great call out too, because even if you strip away a perception of morality associated with an ego stance, right? Even if you remove that morality part, the math is pretty clear that the outcomes are just poor. So even if you don't want to be humble for the reasons of morality and human kindness and humanity, you should at least employ humility because statistically the outcomes are better, right? So ideally you do it for both reasons, but at the very minimum you should pick one. So wrapping up here, as we heard in the beginning, what an amazing career that you've had, and talking to you, you've completely backed up what the title shows. Super talented guy here with Devin Noonan. Devin, chat about a little bit about what's going on at Bedrock, what your team does, kind of value proposition for our listeners. Like, why should people listen to this podcast, get off, and come find you?
Yeah. Well. First and foremost, thanks, Matt. This
Yeah.
has been a great conversation, and I always love riffing about business and negotiation. So it's you don't have to prod me too hard to get me to open up about that. But
Sure.
really exciting times here at Bedrock, and as I mentioned earlier, I left Gartner and joined this team about a year and a half ago, and it was through a classmate of mine who's our president and founder here, Osama Saba. And really, we, had a deep conversation, one night over a drink where he was looking to, take his business to the next level for scale. And, the sales and marketing, arm really wasn't his wheelhouse. He's, a product and operations, a finance guy through and through. So, the synergy was there. And I was like, sounds like you need a guy. And he was like, well, will you be the guy? And I was like, yep. If you are going to give me that, full latitude and trust to do what I need to do, I'll take a look. And, sure enough, yeah, I joined, March of last year, and we did a comprehensive overhaul of everything.
Okay.
All of our positioning, messaging, branding. We were X-Pro at the time, X-Pro FinTech, and pulled the name out, rolled out Bedrock at the end of last year, opened up a brand new office. We relocated from the Riverwalk in Tampa to downtown St. Pete, which just really, embodies the entrepreneurial spirit that we have as a company, and that, just collaborative culture and everyone rolling up the sleeves and wearing different hats. So it was very exciting. And we're thrilled because we're really, tracking on that next evolution of growth here, where we've got, we essentially rebuilt our entire product. We're rolling out some new solutions. Where we really fit, though, just to bring some clarity to the viewers here, is it's in supplier management and enablement.
Okay.
So if you're a large enterprise organization with hundreds or thousands of suppliers, we can really help digitize your whole supplier relationship experience. So think of taking all of your paper onboarding forms or back and forth emails and disparate systems. We consolidate all that into one digitized experience where you can drag and drop tax and financial info, submit everything in less than 10 minutes. So you're creating a frictionless experience to onboard your suppliers. We've built APIs to every major government agency worldwide, where we can do real-time risk verification across 150 different checkpoints. Think of your tint check, EIN, OFAC. It's all done with the click of a button the second the supplier data enters our system. Same thing with banking validation in the US and Canada. We got real-time APIs to validate your banking, to make sure you're sending money to the right people at the right time. Dealing with fraud and nefarious actors. And then our company was actually founded on this other piece of our tool, which we do a totally free of charge recovery audit for our clients. So this was shocking to me when I joined the company and really started to immerse myself in like the procurement and accounts payable landscape. But every major enterprise organization is accidentally issuing overpayments to suppliers every year. And some of them know about it, but just don't know about how to, really go audit it and find it. Others just have no idea. And on average, for every billion in spend that you have with the, suppliers, we're finding 1 to 1.5 million that is just falling through the cracks, that's sitting out there waiting for you to come and claim it. So we don't charge you anything up front at all. All you got to do is drop us your raw data. It'll take you maybe an hour max. And then we roll up our sleeves, we run it through our tech, and then we have a really strong service layer behind the scenes where we'll run email and call campaigns on behalf of our clients to get maximum participation in this audit and put that money back in your pocket. We work exclusively on a contingency fee for that. So listen, if we don't find $1, your worst case scenario is you can go back and tell your executive leadership team that you have the best AP controls of any company in the world, and we'll clean your master data completely free of charge as well. So we're actually enriching all of your contact records. We're building parent-child relationships, designating active versus inactive spend. We're getting you a golden record of supplier data at the very least. So it's a true win-win scenario there. And once again, it kind of goes back to the first point I brought up. It's that too good to be true thing that I have to overcome when I'm working with that particular piece of our solution. But in a nutshell, if you're any size organization and you're looking to streamline your supplier management, recover lost revenue, get your onboarding time down to less than 10 minutes, and have a repository of all of the data you need to successfully engage with your suppliers, then Bedrock's the company for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the website right now. That's what I'm looking at here. And I got to admit, aside from the services that we're talking about, I mean, even the visuals of the website, like, you talked a lot about rebranding and relaunching. I can see it. I mean, this looks great. This looks absolutely amazing. And even aside from the visuals, let's talk a minute about, you guys need to start the services too for like me and Amazon, like I can't even, who knows how much money I've lost with Amazon because they build me the wrong thing here or there, right? Mm-hmm. But is that essentially on that side of the house, what we're talking about is the statistics are showing that companies have just had all this money fall through the cracks. And what Bedrock is saying is, let us find you that money and we will just take a percentage of what we find. There's no charge up front, right? If we find it, great. If we don't, then there's nothing. Is that right?
Yeah, you're spot on. That's it. I mean, I couldn't have said it any better myself, Matt. At the end of the day, we only get a percentage of what we find for you, and you are never coming out of pocket. Like, we don't even invoice you until you have successfully received that credit or claim back. So it's truly no risk whatsoever on that front. And like I said, for larger enterprise organizations that have billions in spend, we're talking about millions of dollars. But the beauty of what we've built here, and this is what's really great about this next evolution of our growth, is this company was built so we don't discriminate against any size or shape organization. So you can be from any industry, you can be a couple million in revenue, whatever it is. We can flex our pricing model and the way that we engage with you to still give you these robust tools and access to just best in class technology to help create a frictionless supplier experience. And that's it at the end of the day, because your supplier relationships, if you're in business, are everything. If you're not getting things on time, if you're not engaging and paying them in a timely manner, it creates bottlenecks and friction across your buying orgs, across your supply chain. We try to simplify that entire experience in one house. We've built out some really great partnerships to help out too, for where we're not gonna be that kind of full service shop when we think of like your broader P2P invoicing and things of that nature. We'll plug into any ERP or P2P system. We have standard bidirectional APIs, and we spin them up faster than just about any company out there. So that's the one thing too. Speed to value is something that we pride ourselves in. It's why we just rebuilt our whole portal. It's why we're building new tools, by the day here. We've got a brand new prevention module coming out, which is going to actually, to an extent, cannibalize some of that recovery audit business, Matt, because what we'll do is actually start stopping it at the point of issuance. So now, before you send out that wrong payment, you drop your file into the Bedrock portal, and we'll run a diagnostic using AI, machine learning, fuzzy logic, and we'll say, hey, these have been identified as potential duplicate payments. Do you want to stop them from going out in this payment run? So we're getting proactive. And I think that's the big thing, and where we're seeing a shift in the market. It's being proactive versus reactive, and stepping up to the plate and really listening to our clients as far as, guiding the next evolution of our product roadmap.
Yeah, well, that reminds me of, which I appreciate completely, again, breaking this down to a low level, for the dumb guys like me. But so the Amazon on the recovery part of it, but also when I'm in Outlook and I'm about to send an email that I say, hey, Mark, here's the attachment. I don't put the attachment. Outlook says, hey, bro, you forgot the attachment, right? Like, oh, thank you. So essentially, we're talking about that where you're going to be saying, this might be a duplicate $20 million payment. You probably don't want to do this. Is that right?
Spot on. Yep. Let's keep that cash flow where it belongs. Let's stop sending those overpayments. Let's get more proactive. We'll still run the audit. We'll still do a root cause analysis to help you button up controls, but we're constantly iterating and innovating when it comes to our tech to provide a best-in-class experience for our clients, and they guide a lot of our product roadmap. We hear things, boots on the ground, and we say, hey, we could probably build what you're thinking. So let's keep the lines of communication open there, and let's see what we can do to help.
Well, I am 1,000% impressed, not only with Bedrock, but with Devin Noonan himself. It's mybedrock.com. Is that right?
That is correct.
Mybedrock.com?
Absolutely.
Okay, mybedrock.com. And also, of course, you see his name here on the screen too, Devin Noonan. You find him on LinkedIn or anywhere else you need to. So, Devin, Bedrock looks amazing. You've been 100% a gentleman. Do you have any closing thoughts for us before we wrap up?
No, I mean, honestly, Matt, I think this was a very refreshing conversation, I would say, surrounding, negotiation and sales and business. And I think if, people are going to leave this conversation with one thing, and I think I've done enough of plugging Bedrock, I'll circle back to just being your authentic self, right? Be transparent, be upfront, and don't be afraid to be direct, but in a, polite manner. And I think the, qualify in, qualify out dynamic is something that I hold, close to the chest here, where the more time I can spend talking to people that can use my help, the better. And the more time I can put back on someone's calendar that can't use us, the better for them. So I think that all just comes to, exuding that empathy, checking your ego at the door, and being your authentic self. And I think that'll take people a lot of really great places, not just in business, but every walk of life.
Imagine that. Imagine the opportunity to be a good person, but also have statistically better outcomes in business. What a beautiful place to be in 2023, huh? Who would have thunk it? So again, everybody, Devin Noonan, thanks so much for hanging out with us, and we'll see you again next time.
It's been a pleasure, Matt. Thank you.